Also, in that same sort of anxious vein, cheers. Thought some nice peppermint hot cocoa would be good as we're talking about gift giving. Because again, so 2 years ago, my first Vlogmas, I talked about gifts to get your graduate student. Now I'm coming back again to kind of discuss some other gift ideas. I stand by everything I gave, but got some more ideas. And what are my qualifications? I just finished my PhD, and I've been thinking about what gifts I would have loved and still would really like, especially as I start this new chapter in my life. And I think the graduate student in your life would appreciate this too. So to start off, again, we're going to go with under 20. Of course, with these cases, you can do things like basic gift cards like Target or Amazon. This can also range for any of those price ranges that I'm going to mention because, again, sometimes your graduate student is not going to know what they want. At least in my case, what usually happens is I just go like, meh, if I don't have it, I don't need it. But then having that money in case means that like, oh, I'm like, oh, I'll see it and be like, yes, I can do this. But some of the easy stuff, of course, is actually like a fidget toy. So you can do fidget spinners. I really like just like the pop. I forgot what they're called, like the pop sockets. Not pop sockets because that's what you have on your phone, but you know, that thing. I've seen some other ones, like there was this one that's kind of this like, you can extend it and squish it and it's a mesh. We really like that. We're really anxious. I have kept with me my little pop thing while I'm like in meetings because it just helps me focus. I think about when I was TAing this, not TAing, I was an instructor, but with my teaching, the actual graduate TA for the class had a fidget spinner because the lab manager gave it to the graduate student because the graduate student was very fidgety and the lab manager was like, so you stop destroying things. And I've heard stories of my advisor breaking something that had ball bearings in it because he was fidgeting so much. So fidget toys, great for the stocking stuffer. And in these cases, that'd be stuff that'd be under like $10 because that'd be something to get like the small one so we can just kind of have it in our pocket when needed. Also, in that same sort of anxious vein, those weighted heated toys. So they're like stuffed animals, like heated pads, and they've got the little beans in them that have a little bit of weighting. Oh, great. Just so we can curl up and just feel a little bit calmer. Like that would have been great for me to have in that 2 weeks between when I had to turn in my dissertation and actually present. Next, we've got things like weekly planners. All graduate students try to use planners. Sometimes they're really good at it, sometimes they're not. The one that I found that worked decently well for me is actually having the weeks on, like the days on one side and then having just notes on the other. So it was one full week and you could kind of go back and forth. That's what worked best for me, so I could have a weekly task list and just hit it when I need to, as well as having, if I need to have daily stuff, I can account for it. There are a bunch of planners. You can get things at like Barnes & Noble, or you could go to like Etsy and get online ones. There are also different planners specifically for graduate students, especially the ones that account for like timelines that you may have or keeping track of reports. I think those are a little bit more expensive, but I'll have them right here in case you're curious. Other things that would be really useful are annotation pens for marking, especially if they are printing out papers so they can mark and write on them. Also, if they are trying to edit any of their work, that is also a good one. I know when I initially talked about it, having those nice leather portfolios, that was what I kind of had for those, like a big budget item, but just even you can get cheaper portfolios like here for when they're at conferences so they can have it to write on. I have 2 of them. One of them I do plan on donating, but because it's from UK's graduate school and I got it at an event, but I also have one that I use consistently at conferences, and so also just getting them extra pads of papers with those portfolios. Yes, I've got mine right here, just really simple. You can see like notes, all that jazz. Highly recommend getting this for your graduate student in your life if they do not already have one of these, because they come in handy, especially at conferences. I take a lot of notes on this when I'm at a conference. Because also with conferences, it's a little bit of a faux pas to have your laptop out unless you've got slides open. Otherwise, it's not really looked upon fondly because they think that you're stealing information. But if you're just taking notes, that looks a little bit better. Next is compression socks. I know that sounds kind of weird, but graduate students have to travel a lot. We're either in the car or on planes, flying to and from conferences, or we are going to having to go to different family events. So having compression socks, we're getting up there. We're not that old, but we're getting up there in age, and we're not the greatest to our bodies in any which way. So having compression socks helps a little bit, keeps the circulation going. Hell, we are sitting down like writing for hours on end. Compression socks would be good. You can always get them plants, small succulents. I joke, my mother, when she thinks I'm upset, will just send me plants. I have been able to maintain plants because, especially again, if your graduate student does not have any pets, getting them a plant means that they are going to take better care of themselves. And then lastly, there's two more. A fun one, especially if you want to get them a quick like a simple but really meaningful gift, is getting them an antique book related to their field. So in my case, I picked up for friends books on microscopy and that are from conferences, or books like on entropy, which I have because that's what my field is focused on, is on like high entropy. So having books on entropy is a big thing. So those are some of the ones I really recommend. And then again, in the working and writing, blue light glasses, because we're going to be working late into the night. We're staring at our computers for hours on end, especially towards that latter portion of your academic career. So having blue light glasses are great, and they are cheap. So those are just some of the easy ones under 20 bucks. Next, we're going to the $20 to $50 range. Okay, so again, in the traveling, this is something that I find really useful. Cooler bags. Yes, you're going to get paid, but you can save some money when you're traveling and having a cooler bag with you in the car, so you can have your extra Celsiuses or have some food so if you just want to drive through the day. Having that, really useful. Again, also picnics or club events, having that cooler is great. In that same vein of having those like events where you may have to be bringing food, having actually a camping chair. I have gotten a lot of use out of mine. I think I'd pick mine up at Big Lots, but they can range up to like about 30 bucks. Typically, if you're going on the lower end, unless you're going to like Five Below, you can get them for really cheap. But if you want a decent one that's not going to fall apart, like a mid-range one, in this case, again, you can use it for like club events where you are going out and having picnics, so you don't know how much seating there's going to be. I also just use it when I have drinks out with friends, like we'll just be sitting out in front of our apartment and having a nice drink, because that, like, you need to decompress. It's a good way so you can have like bonfire. These are useful for social events, which, remember, graduate school, you still need to be somewhat social. You cannot be this like island of isolation. Next, you have, and we're getting it again into the travel, because surprisingly, graduate school has a lot of travel. It's all on the university dime, but you need to have a lot of travel, and it's a lot of things that you don't typically think about. And that's a carry-on garment bag. So something like this, you can get that for relatively cheap in that $35 range. Again, other small pieces of luggage, that's something that you can have put your suits, your nice shoes, anything for conferences that you would need, you can have it there, because conferences also typically only range about 3 to 4 days, so that is enough time for like just using a carry-on. But you want to be resourceful with your space, because again, typically you will at least bring one suit to a conference. The rest you can kind of mix and match and rewear like pieces like pants and reuse the same shoes. I'm not sure most of the time the women end up wearing multiple pairs of shoes. I'm very much guilty of that one. But so those are some of the ones that I would really recommend, is looking at some of those like carry-on pieces of luggage. You can get them for pretty cheap, and like I said, I personally like the garment, getting one that's a garment bag, so you can easily hang up your suits so they look nice and clean and pressed. Also, for those who have suits, make sure you cut out that little X, you know how they stitch it for the vents, cut that out. I have watched a friend give a defense, and I still see the little like stitching right there, and I was just like, that's just not a great look. I've gone to career fairs and I've told other students like, hey, you should really cut that. It'll fit, the suit will fit better, all of that. And then other ones, electric kettle, because we consume a lot of caffeine typically. So having an electric kettle, so you can either use that for your instant coffee or your tea, because a lot of people drink a lot of tea. It just makes life easier, and Americans, we don't usually have kettles. Like, I grew up using actually a kettle like on just the stovetop, but just using something like that, that's really useful to have. It does not take up a lot of space, and they can be pretty cheap. The other thing, again, in this almost relaxation, is getting them nicer pans. Like, graduate students typically are in their mid to late 20s, and they are kind of in a weird stage in life. They have things that they have collected over the years, but maybe they don't have these nice pans that most of the time their friends are getting because they're getting bigger jobs or they're getting married and they're going through those stages. So a couple of nice pans, especially those graduate students that use cooking as their like decompressing time, because again, this is going to be a running theme. Graduate school is very stressful. So a couple of nice pans or pots, all of that, great. And I know this is late, but honestly, you can get it on clearance and give it to them afterwards because it'll always go well. Coffee and tea advent calendars. Because again, this is going to be a running theme again. We are addicted to caffeine. I have always wondered how the Mormons can do it where they don't drink caffeine while in graduate school, unless they drink a lot of those like sodas and Red Bulls. This is something that I do recommend. You can get them the different coffee and tea advent calendars so they can just have more selection and treat themselves a bit. Also, again, in kind of that $20 range, it's on the lower end because you could probably get it cheaper in the $15, but more travel mugs. Do not get us more of the like normal mugs. Everybody already has so many normal mugs, but travel mugs, again, really useful either going to and from the office or to and from for conferences while driving. More travel mugs. Also, probably actually getting them something akin to a Stanley, any of these, because we don't drink a lot of water. I mean, some of the graduate students that seem to have their life together are like drinking enough water, but like, you get what I mean. Stuff to make sure that we do not just kind of keel over because we have not taken care of ourselves. Hey, I know I look a little bit different. This is editing Obi here. I am coming in because I didn't really like this last little bit. So instead we are refilming it. So this is anything above 500, not 500. Although if you want to spend $500 on a graduate student, go right ahead. But above 50 bucks. And this has a huge range. So some of these things are repeats really from the first time because I really do stand by it. Those things are like suits. Those can typically get up to about $200, but even if you don't want to do a full suit, getting some nicer professional clothing for your graduate student is a big plus. They are typically having to go through like thrifting, which is great, but sometimes the like things are either stained or there's just some more wear and tear. So getting them like a suit that is tailored to them is great, because again, like I said, those are typically going to be closer to about $200 with getting both the suit and pants, and any sort of alterations that can increase the price. Similarly, adding in some nice shoes, like leather shoes. Personally, one of my favorite pairs of shoes are these. They are from Cole Haan. I love them. I wear them all the time, and yes, they're heels, but I can just kind of rock them. I wore them for my defense, and I was very elegant during that whole thing. But yes, just generally, again, a nice pair of shoes because we're on our feet all the time at these conferences. And also, if you want to get your graduate student instead like running shoes or other workout shoes, because maybe working out is how they relieve their stress, but generally shoes. That's something that are a big ticket item for anybody, but when you're on a stipend, that can be kind of hard. Similarly, if your graduate student likes cooking, you know how I mentioned earlier, you get them like 1 or 2 pans, you buy them a full set instead. You get them a nice set, full set. Same thing with knives, get them a couple of really good knives. I know in Anthony Bourdain's book, he talks about only having like a few stuff that feels good for them, but get the higher end stuff because that are like easy to sharpen. And so also in this case, including a sharpener for the knives, something so that they can really enjoy cooking and have like a little bit of a heightened experience, because they're not going to be able to typically go out and eat like a fancy dinner or something. If they are not big fans of cooking, HelloFresh, because that reduces some of that like stress. They don't have to think about what they're going to make for dinner. They can just have whatever it is for HelloFresh. They also don't have to think about going to get groceries. Like y'all have seen, I'm not one to go out more than once a day most of the time, so having that kind of cut down is great. Other things, again, that celebratory liquor, you'll have seen me talk about the liquor I have purchased for myself. That is the Single Barrel Knob Creek. That's the 9 years. That was about $60 or $70. I purchased it many years ago. But also, like, I got as a gift from family Woodford that had my name, like, and the date of my defense, like, etched into it. So getting them a nice treat in that sense is a big one, because they're probably not going to spend that on themselves. But if they have something that's like, okay, once I'm done, I can open this, great. Other things, massages or spas, because as I've mentioned, we don't treat ourselves the best most of the time. We're running ourselves ragged. So having a nice massage or spa day, getting a nice facial, something for them to just kind of disengage their brain, that would be amazing. Also, again, as I mentioned really early on, you have the gift cards. This is really that kind of price range, especially if you go for like $100 on a gift card. That would help a graduate student a lot, either, again, buying groceries or in the process of picking up furniture, because maybe they're having to furnish an apartment. They're going from being an undergrad where they may have been living in dorms to a graduate student, and they're having to start to piece together more things in their apartment. Or in my case, I've lived in a graduate housing where everything has been furnished, so I'm having to buy furniture now. So having gift cards would be really useful. So that's a big one. Again, also covering a bill. And this one specifically, one that I would actually really recommend, is doing Amazon Prime, specifically getting them buying 1 year for their Amazon Prime, because also that means that they get Grubhub like deliveries for free. So if they are stressed, they don't have to think about buying. And just having Amazon Prime is typically good. They can watch movies so that they can, again, decompress. So that would be a good one to cover, and that's about 120-ish. Do not quote me on that. I'll have it right here. Other options that you can do are things like electric, water, paying for like a portion of their rent if it's not too bad, like covering some sort of bill that they may have, like, or just covering their groceries for a month. Coming in quickly because I realized this, when I'm talking about bills, another option is actually offering to pay for a textbook or two, because y'all know those suckers can be really expensive, especially if you cannot find like the PDFs online. Those are kind of interesting, kind of simple ones for you to do. Next is more on the, like, it's invaluable in the fact that you're spending time with them, and that would be helping them move if they are moving, if they're finishing up their graduate program and they're about to move, volunteering to help as they're packing, as they're trying to get their car filled up. That would be a big one. Another thing would be helping them maintain their house if they're actually finishing up. Like, my mother came to help me while I was writing, and that just made it so much easier for me while I was working. So that one is invaluable and really helpful. And like, if you don't have the money but you have the time, that is something that you can do for your graduate student. And I do hope all of these make a lot of sense. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!